Yo, what's up, Sixers fans? I can't believe the season's about to start. We are so close to seeing all of this come together with Maxey, PG, Embiid. And before the season starts, I wanted to talk to you real quick about 10 questions about the Sixers heading into the season. We'll start off with how the Sixers are going to manage back-to-backs with Paul George and Joel Embiid. So, we know that both of them aren't going to really be playing back-to-backs, but we really don't know how the Sixers are going to manage that. Are the Sixers going to stagger their back-to-backs with who plays? One night might be Embiid, one night might be Paul George. Are they going to play them together in back-to-backs? Or are they going to do it on a case-by-case basis where, if it's two easier teams on the back-to-back, they might rest one for one game and rest the other for the other game? We have no clue, but the Sixers really need to figure that out so that we can get the most out of our season and have the most wins stacked up at the end of the season. If they do that right, we can come out on top. If not, it's going to be rough. So the next question is, will Maxey lead the team in scoring? So I know that's pretty controversial. Embiid has led the team in scoring for the last few years, but he is going to be taking a step back this year, and we do have Paul George now. So there's going to be a lot of load to share, and I think Maxey is ready to take that step to lead the team in scoring, especially if Embiid is trying to not do so much this year. And then Paul George has accepted being the third option, who's going to space the floor and put up a bunch of threes and put the ball in the basket when asked to do so. I think there's a very good chance that Maxey could end up being the leading scorer at the end of the season. I'm not saying he will, but I think he's going to be closer to Embiid than a lot of people think. Can the Sixers finish with a top 3 seed while having Embiid and Paul George not playing in back-to-backs? So, there are 15 back-to-backs on the schedule this year, which is a lot. That's more than we've had in the Embiid era, I believe. I went back and saw we had 14, 12, 13, 12, and so on in the last few seasons. But all of a sudden we have 15 this year. So, it's a lot of games that we won't have them if they really aren't going to play back-to-backs. So, we really got to be smart about scheduled losses and teams that we're going to rest them against and play them for. I still think the Sixers can and will finish with the 3 seed, but that's so long as outside of the back-to-backs we stay relatively healthy as a team. Now, my next question is, if KJ Martin isn't traded, who is the person on the team who gets traded? So I think we all believe that there's going to be some vet minimum deals thrown in a trade to match salaries. I think we're all fairly confident about that part, possibly throwing in Jared McCain for the right deal. That one's a little more controversial. I think some Sixers fans will be for it, some against it. But I think with those draft picks that we have, we really have to think about, do we hold on to those Clippers draft picks or do we sell them now to get the final piece that we need, that power forward, that really big wing, someone to help rebound, one of those people to help us. So a lot of things to think about, but if KJ Martin isn't the one traded, if he ends up having a pretty good season and he stays with the team, it could be Kelly Oubre, Jared McCain. I don't really know too many others. Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, but I think if Oubre isn't fitting with the team well and KJ Martin has, expanded his game and he's able to knock down some threes at a consistent rate, that conversation about who gets traded might be a little bit interesting. Will Embiid or Paul George qualify for NBA awards? In order to qualify for the NBA awards, you need to play 65 games. Do we think either or both of them are going to make that threshold? I do not think Embiid will make it. I think Embiid will play about 60 to 64 games. I don't know if he'll make the 65. Paul George, I do think will make it. I'm going to predict that Paul George plays in 66 games this year, which will qualify him for NBA awards. Which leads me to, will Paul George be an all-star this year? So, making the All-Star team is very hard now. The East is starting to get better. There's a lot of really good talent in the East. We now have Karl Anthony Towns over here, so there's not going to be as many, forward big spots. Even guard, it's going to be hard for Maxey to make another All-Star team. I believe he will. I believe Embiid will make another All-Star team. It's going to be hard for Paul George to make an All-Star team. I think if he starts out the season hot and he's making threes and, the Sixers are winning, he'll definitely make the All-Star team. If it starts out a little rough for us, or Paul George is only averaging, around 20 points per game, then I think there's a good chance he might not make the All-Star team, as it's hard to get 3 people from the same team into the All-Star game, especially when you have all the talent on the Cavaliers, the Knicks, the Celtics, Pacers. All those teams have a lot of talent. After Maxey, Paul George, and Embiid, who is the most important player on the team? That's a difficult question. Some will say Caleb Martin. Some will say the backup big position, Andre Drummond, because Embiid will probably miss a lot of games for safety purposes. So it's going to be very important for us to have a really good backup big. Caleb Martin, we brought him over here for a reason. There's a good chance he could be the 4th most important player on this team. It could be Kelly Oubre. And then the last person I think who could be the 4th most important player on the team is Yabusele. He's played really well in preseason. We really need that backup 4 position to be solidified. If he can, keep hustling for these rebounds, dunking the ball, and knocking down that 3 ball, he could be very important to this team moving forward. How many games will the Sixers win this year? The most wins that a Sixers team has had in the Embiid era is the 22-23 Sixers. That was a team with Harden, Thibault. I think we might have traded Thibault for McDaniels. We had George Niang, D'Anthony Melton, Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, a few other people. That team had 54 wins. They went 54-28. That was the best record that the Sixers have had in the Embiid era. And I think this team right now has better players than that team. That year, Harden only played 58 games due to his injury. Maxey also had an injury at the beginning of the year and only played 60 games. Embiid played his most, which was 68. Tobias played 74, Melton 77, PJ Tucker 75, Milton 76, George Niang 78, Paul Reed 69, Montrezl Harrell 57, and Daniel House 56. That was like the majority of our rotation right there, those guys. I think our rotation now with Kelly Oubre, with Caleb Martin, with KJ Martin, Yabusele, Embiid, Paul George, I think that team is not as good as this team. And I think if Embiid can play, mid-60s, and Paul George can play mid-60s, and Maxey plays more than 60, those guys are all better than they were before. Having Oubre and Caleb Martin and all these other guys, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, we have a lot of vets. We have a lot of talent. When one guy sits, we have someone who can step in and replace them. We have young talent with Jared McCain and Adem Bona. I think this team is just deeper from top to bottom. I think Maxey's a way better player now than he was that year. There's a good chance that this team, if they can stay healthy, wins more than that. So that team won 54 games. I think if this team's healthy, they can win 59, 60 games. I built in some grace there. I figured there might be one point in the season when we're going through a slump, or we're missing a couple solid players in our depth chart, and we're depleted, or we had a few back-to-backs, or a long road trip. I'm thinking that the Sixers will win 55 games this year, which traditionally will put us in the 2 or 3 seed. Now, I think the Celtics will win about 60 games again, probably more than 60. I think the Knicks are going to be tough. Tibbs likes to play his guys a hella minutes, treats every regular season game like a playoff game. I think the Knicks are going to win a lot of games. I think the Knicks are going to be in the high 50s. I think they'll probably be at 57 wins this year. I think the Sixers will come in right behind the Knicks and be around like 54 to 57 range. I think we'll get the 3 seed. So we'll play the Knicks in the second round. They'll have home court advantage. But I think that'll be the matchup. I think the Bucks will finish fourth. But yeah, I'm gonna give the Sixers 55 wins. I think it can be more, but that's where I'm putting us this year, 3 seed. And then who is your dream trade target? Who do you want the Sixers to trade for? I think those guys out in the Pelicans, out in New Orleans, we got to keep an eye on them. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, any of those guys. I think Aldama over in Memphis, really good target to look at. Some really good power forwards out there, some really good big wings. We need to take a swing on one of them if they end up being available. No one's available right now, but if the opportunity comes, we need to take a shot. We need to give out all those draft picks. I don't care. Throw McCain in there. Throw KJ Martin in there. If Kelly Oubre's not looking good, not like a fit, throw him in there. We got to pull someone back in. If the team looks like they can win and we're just missing one thing, we need to go all in for that thing. So, who will average more minutes per game, Caleb Martin or Kelly Oubre? I think it's going to be very interesting to see which of them ends up being a more important and bigger part of this team. We'll see who Nick Nurse puts in at the end of games. Right now in the preseason, Kelly Oubre has been the starter. Not sure if I agree with that. I really would like to see Caleb Martin start, but if he's fine being the guy who's the energy off the bench, like and it works, okay, we'll run with that. But at the end of the game, you know, I'd hope that Caleb Martin's in the game. He has that big shot experience, that finals run experience, so I think it's very important that he's in the game, as he tends to make the right decision, especially with the ball in his hands. Thanks for sticking around for this video. Please, you know, in the comment section, leave some of these answers to these questions that I've asked below, and I look forward to having a great Sixers season this year. Like always, like, comment, subscribe, you know.